Dr. Anthony Chaffee, thank you so much for joining us for this quick mini interview. I'm not going to waste any time, so let's just jump right in. Why is it that nobody is talking about plant carcinogens?
Oh, I think most people just don't know about it, and something that is a very esoteric piece of information. I mean, I just happened to hear it in my cancer biology class. Most people, even medical students or pre-medical students, don't take cancer biology, and they may not have had as good of a professor as I did. But I mean, this is something that's been studied thoroughly over the decades. And we have a number of papers out showing the carcinogenic nature of some of these things and put them in perspective with pesticides such as ALAR, which was studied back in the 1980s with Professor Bruce Ames from UC Berkeley. And he found that there were 42 different toxins that he could identify in dozens and dozens and dozens of everyday vegetables that we would eat and fruit on a regular basis. And he found that 20 of those to be carcinogenic. And he found that of those toxins that he isolated in these, that there were in each individual plant, like there were 10,000 times more naturally occurring poisons in the plants, in the vegetable, like Brussels sprouts or broccoli, than the pesticides we were spraying on them. And that just in mushrooms, like the white table mushrooms, those mushrooms were 500 times more likely to cause cancer than the pesticides we were spraying on them. So this is why we still have pesticides, right? Because they were saying, oh, we should get rid of these things, they're toxic, and they are. But when you put it in context and you realize that what we're spraying them on actually have their own defense chemicals, they have their own pesticides, their own insecticides that they have cultivated and developed over millions of years in order to defend themselves from the attack of animals and insects all the time. Then you put that into perspective and you realize, okay, well, this isn't as big of a deal as maybe we once thought it was. Since then, we've discovered many, many more carcinogens. When I was taking cancer biology, 11, 12 years after that paper was published, Professor Ames knew about 20 substances that were carcinogenic over all the different plants that he looked at. And when I took this, they already knew about 136 just in Brussels sprouts and over 100 just in mushrooms and over 60, over 80 in all the different sorts of vegetables we were looking at. So they've discovered more and more and more. And even the WHO, who, has come out in support of eating more fruits and vegetables, they have entire web pages dedicated to all the different naturally occurring toxins in everyday plants and vegetables and fruit that we eat on a daily basis, that hundreds of millions of people subsist on as a majority, if not the majority of their caloric intake, and that these things can be toxic, can be carcinogenic, can be mutagenic, can damage your hormones, and cause all sorts of other different disruptions in your body. And that many of these are quite toxic, and you have to prepare them specially, just like beans, legumes. You have to soak these in water for a certain number of hours. You have to boil them for a certain number of minutes minimum. If you don't do that, they can be quite toxic. These lectins that are in there can be fatal. Even many lectins are so damaging as to be able to kill you. Just kidney beans, which are very, very, very common, food stuff around the world, undercooked or uncooked, as little as 5 of them have been known to put people in the hospital. So that's because of these lectins, because of these toxins. And undercooked beans can be more toxic than uncooked beans. So, this is something that we need to understand, we need to know about. And maybe people say, well, we don't eat those without preparing them properly and without cooking them properly. Well, no, that's not necessarily true, because not everybody knows that you need to do this. Not everyone knows that it's important to do this. And so maybe they cook it improperly and they get damaged from this. And people can still die from eating cassava root, which 500 million people around the world in the tropics rely on as their number one source of calories. It's the number 3 most important calorie source in all of the tropics, right? So billions of people eat this stuff. And if you don't prepare it properly, it can have a fatal amount of cyanide. But even but it doesn't get rid of all the cyanide. And even low-grade exposure to cyanide is known to damage the thyroid and cause neurotoxicity. So this isn't harmless. This is not benign. And at the end of the day, they say, well, we do treat these things, and people may deny one way or the other that they cause as much harm as they do, even though it's well documented. I mean, there's hospital records that can show this. But what it does show you is that if you have to put something through a chemical treatment, you have to do something actively to it, that we don't have the biomechanics and the physiology to break it down safely and to absorb the nutrients properly, which means we are not designed to eat them, right? We do not have the machinery and the biomechanics to break these things down safely and eat them safely, which means we are not designed to eat them. We were not evolved to eat them, and they are not our optimal food, because if they were, we would have all of this stuff in place. You can't say that something's optimal for you if we aren't even designed to eat it.
Exactly. Do you know the rationale behind why undercooked kidney beans could be even more problematic than cooked?
I don't know the exact mechanism of that. But that was just that's something that was mentioned in the WHO article on kidney beans.
That's very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been hearing this argument lately that probiotics in our gut need the fiber. And if they don't get the fiber from the diet, like plants and salads, then they're gonna start eating away at our digestive lining. They're gonna start eating us in order to get food. Have you ever heard that argument? And it just seems to me that that makes no sense, given that a lot of people have been eating zero fiber diets for decades, and they're not only not dying, but they're actually thriving.
Yeah, or zero fiber diets throughout the course of multiple generations, throughout an entire civilization, going back millennia. Because during the ice ages, I mean, how many fibrous plants were we eating? How many fibrous plants were available when people were crossing over from Asia to America all over the land bridge? There were none available. People were exclusively eating meat because there was only meat to eat. I definitely heard people say that you have to have fiber for your gut microbiome. I have not heard that they would eat your own intestine. That's I don't know what they're basing that on, but it's not any actual evidence, because I haven't had fiber. I mean, even when I was eating other things, I still hated anything with fiber in it. I did not like vegetables or anything like that. I was never a big fan of fruit either. So, and it's been 6 years now, so I don't know. My gut's doing fine. So I don't know what they're basing that on, but that doesn't actually meet with the observed data, with the observed phenomenon. So as far as would it be beneficial for your gut bacteria? Well, there's the microbiome, the science behind the microbiome is still very, very new. We don't know a lot about this, but there are a lot of people that have actually studied the microbiome and have actually argued that on a carnivore diet, they're actually very pro carnivore diet, because they say that you get a very, very wide range of diversity in your microbiome, which is beneficial. And the kinds of bacteria that you get are also the ones associated with better health. Also, there are a number of different bacteria in our guts that thrive on carbohydrates and fiber that are associated with many different autoimmune diseases, such as multiple sclerosis and rheumatoid arthritis. And so, that's not very good either. So it can cultivate different bacteria that aren't great for you. Now, one of the arguments I've heard for the inclusion of fiber for our microbiome is that they can make butyrate, and that is good for our enterocytes, and that feeds our gut lining. And people say, wow, well, you need that because your gut lining needs this stuff, right? You make these are one of the main ketone bodies that you make when you're in ketosis, when you stop eating carbohydrates in general. And it's also available in most animal fats, and butter gets its name from butyric acid. It has such a high content, so you don't need it. You get far more from your blood supply to your enterocytes. You simply do not need this in the form of breakdown product from fiber. So that's not really the best argument I've ever heard that you need this for your microbiome.
Yeah, agreed. And to wrap this up, what are you most excited about for the future of the carnivore diet?
Well, I'm just very excited that this is getting more and more traction, and more people are coming around to it. More and more people like yourself and myself are just having channels and talking about this and presenting this stuff, because the evidence is there, the data is there, and the more popular it gets from a grassroots movement, and more people are doing this and having success and being healthy and active and coming off medications and losing weight and just improving their lives in general, the harder it is for people to ignore. And so then you'll have more studies, you'll have more money going in behind this to say, okay, well, let's see what we can do here. Let's see what we can prove. Let's see how this does. I talk to more and more people, and again, and affecting younger generations of people, of scientists and students who are going through medical school, going through doing their Ph.D. in nutritional sciences, and they're getting interested. And it was like, this is great. I want to do my dissertation, examining, the carnivore diet in some
That's
aspect.
gonna be
And that's
hard though.
great.
Trust me.
Sorry?
It's gonna be hard to pitch that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm sure, but it's but there's more and more traction. And so the more and more people that are getting excited about this, the more things are going to get done, and the harder it is for people to ignore. I mean, now you have a lot of people coming out and trash talking the carnivore diet for a number of different reasons that they've just made up that day. But but at least they have to address it, because it's become recognized, well recognized enough in individuals having such good results that that people are taking notice, and they're saying, well, maybe I should try this. Well, why shouldn't I try this? And they go to their the people that they respect and who have a very different view and say, well, what do you think? I mean, this is the people having really good results. Why is that? And they'll come up with some excuse because they want to protect their investments and their livelihood. But it's harder and harder and harder to ignore. And so the truth will out. This will get out there. More and more people will get better. More and more studies will be done. And I think that they will show that this is our optimal diet, and this is more beneficial than other diets. And so I'm very excited about that. I think this is very close to just sort of getting into the mainstream. And then once it's there, I think it's going to have a very large sort of booming effect after that, because once a critical mass of people start doing this and seeing just how beneficial it is, and they can come off these medications, then they can really take control of their own life and their health. I think game's over at that point. Cat will be out of the bag, and it's not going back in.
I agree with every word you said. I love it. And I'm excited to see the future. And you're right. It's harder and harder to dismiss us and to dismiss the thousands upon thousands of success stories of people. Are they all lying? Obviously not. And I keep getting surprised, especially on social media and just from talking to my clients. There's so many more of us out there. A lot more. Like, not everybody who's a carnivore is, starting a YouTube channel and getting on the
Yeah.
internet. Like, there are regular doctors, regular people, everybody out there, it seems to have heard about it. And so, yeah, it's definitely, I think, growing a lot faster than we even realize. And so that's exciting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Chaffee.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.